A young girl and her mother set out alone for a peaceful fishing trip, but they never came back. Just hours after leaving the marina, a sudden and violent sea storm rolled in. When contact was lost, everyone feared the worst. Search crews scoured the waters for days, then weeks, but found only scattered wreckage. Most believed the ocean had claimed them. That was 8 months ago, until today. In the quiet coastal town of Greyhoor, where the sea is both lifeblood and threat, Eli Wells returned to the same marina where he'd last seen his wife, Hannah, and their 9-year-old daughter, Sophie. Every week, he came here. Same time, same ritual. Not to fish, but to search. He remembered that morning too vividly, Sophie bouncing with excitement, holding the small fishing rod he gave her for her birthday. Hannah loading up their gear, calm and confident. "We'll bring back dinner," she had smiled. The forecast said maybe some light rain. Nothing dangerous. No one expected the storm to hit so hard or so fast. 3 days later, pieces of their boat washed up. Hannah's waterproof backpack, Sophie's pink hat with a cartoon fish, a plastic water bottle with her name scribbled in marker. It should have been enough to convince Eli, but it wasn't. The Coast Guard ended their search. Volunteers stopped coming. But Eli couldn't let go, not without knowing for sure. Every weekend, he launched his boat, scanning new parts of the coast, diving in rough waters, following even the slimmest hint that they might have made it to shore somewhere. Sealbone Island, a forested stretch 15 miles out, had become his main focus, remote and rarely visited. If they'd survived, maybe they'd gone there, but nothing ever turned up. This morning was supposed to be like every other. Eli, alone with his gear, chasing hope, until his phone rang. It was Greyhoor Police. "Mr. Wells," the officer said, "we need you to come in. There's been a development." Eli's heart nearly stopped. He tried not to let hope take over. There had been leads before, each ending in heartbreak, but something in the officer's voice felt different. 10 minutes later, Eli walked into the station. Officer Reynolds met him at the door and guided him to a small room where a man he barely recognized sat, a fisherman he'd seen around the harbor. "This is Tomas Herrera," the officer said. "He came in this morning with something he thinks you need to hear." Herrera stood, his voice low but serious. "Mr. Wells, I don't want to give you false hope, but I saw something yesterday out near the reefs, something strange, something you might want to see for yourself." And just like that, the story took a turn no one in Greyhoor could have imagined. "What exactly did you see?" Eli asked, his voice tight with anticipation. Thomas shifted in his chair, clearly uneasy. "I was out early this morning, delivering supplies to the Marine Research Station on Wolf Island. I run that route a few times a week, seafood, equipment, that kind of thing." Eli nodded. He knew the station, remote, quiet. "On the way back, I took a shortcut past the old shipping lane near Wolf Rock Lighthouse. Saves me about 40 minutes. The fog was thick, real thick, but as I passed the lighthouse, I saw something that stopped me cold." He paused, then continued carefully. "It looked like a little girl standing on the dock. She was waving at me." Eli's heart raced. "How old?" he asked. Tomas exhaled slowly. "Hard to say in that fog, but she couldn't have been older than 9, and the way she waved, it felt familiar." He leaned forward. "Back at the harbor, I saw one of those missing posters, the one with your daughter's photo, and that's when it hit me. The girl I saw looked a lot like her." Officer Reynolds jumped in. "To be clear, Mr. Herrera wasn't entirely sure, which is why he came to us instead of contacting you directly." Eli's mind was already racing. "The lighthouse? It's still active?" "Not officially," Reynolds replied. "It was decommissioned years ago, sold to a private owner named Malcolm Vire. Claims he's keeping it for historical preservation." "Do you have a number for him?" Eli asked, trying to stay calm. Reynolds picked up the desk phone and dialed. Nothing. Lines disconnected. That was enough. Eli stood. Then we need to go there, now. Reynolds hesitated, but Tomas quickly offered, "The weather's clear. I can take you." Reynolds sighed. "I'll request a patrol boat. If there's a child on that rock, ghost stories or not, we're checking it out." Within the hour, Eli was aboard a patrol vessel with Thomas and 2 officers, headed straight for Wolf Rock Lighthouse. As the shoreline faded behind them, Eli stared ahead, barely blinking. Could this be it? After 8 agonizing months, was the truth finally waiting at a place he'd never thought to look? Just past noon, the lighthouse came into view, a towering, weathered gray column standing guard over the ocean since 1911. As they approached, something caught Eli's eye. "There," Thomas pointed. "That boat. It wasn't here before." On the jagged rocks near the dock sat a small wooden vessel, clearly damaged, its hull split, pieces torn by the sea. It looked like it hadn't moved in weeks. Officer Carter eased the patrol boat alongside the dock. "Stay sharp," he warned. "We don't know what we're walking into." The 4 men stepped ashore. The concrete beneath their feet was slick and aged. Eli's breath caught in his throat. He could feel something, close. Carter banged on the heavy door. "Police! Is anyone inside?" No answer, just silence. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. He tried the handle. Locked. "She was right here," Thomas said, pointing at the dock. "Right on this spot, waving." "You're sure it wasn't the fog playing tricks?" Carter asked skeptically. "No," Thomas said firmly. "I saw her." Eli stepped over to the wrecked boat. It was about 14 feet, small, more suited for short trips than open water. "This boat," he said quietly, "it could have been drifting for months before ending up here." Just then, the low growl of a distant engine broke the silence. They turned as a sleek motorboat emerged from the horizon, closing in fast. "Someone's coming," Reynolds said, instinctively resting a hand on his belt. The boat slowed. At the helm stood an older man with a sea-worn face and thick white hair. He studied the group with guarded eyes before easing his boat alongside the dock. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" he called out, voice firm but tired. Officer Carter stepped forward, showing his badge. "Coastal Police. Are you Malcolm Vire?" The man stepped onto the dock, raising an eyebrow. "I am." "This is private property," the man said firmly. "What brings police all the way out here?" "We received a report this morning," Officer Carter replied. "A young girl was seen at this lighthouse. We're here to follow up." Malcolm Vire's expression barely changed, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "A child? Huh. That explains the unexpected company." He gave a short, almost forced laugh. "Yes, I was here earlier with my niece. She was helping me gather some old boxes I keep stored here. That's probably who your witness saw." The tiny flicker of hope inside Eli began to fade, but Malcolm's tone, too measured, too rehearsed, made something in Eli's gut twist. "Your niece?" Officer Carter asked. "Would you mind showing us a photo of her?" Malcolm stiffened. "What for? Are you implying I'm lying about my own family?" "Of course not," Carter said evenly. "It's standard protocol when children are mentioned in a report. Nothing more." After a pause, Malcolm reached for his phone. He scrolled with visible reluctance, then turned the screen for only a brief second, just long enough to show a girl with short blonde hair. Then he pulled the phone away and returned it to his pocket. "Satisfied?" he said, a cold edge creeping into his voice. Officer Carter turned to Thomas. "Is that the girl you saw?" Thomas hesitated, studying the man. "It could be," he admitted. "She looked similar. Like I said, it was foggy, and I was at a distance." Eli stepped forward, his voice raw. You said she looked like my daughter. From the flyer. I wasn't sure, Thomas replied quietly. She was wearing red, like in the photo. But it was hard to make out details in that fog. The hope drained from Eli's chest, like water through cracks. Mr. Wells, Officer Carter said gently, I understand what you're feeling, but we need to stay grounded. The odds of your daughter surviving alone out here for this long? Eli gave a small nod, not trusting himself to speak. Malcolm watched them all with a blank expression. So that's what this is, he muttered. You think my niece is this man's missing daughter? His voice hardened. I'm sorry for your loss, sir, but no one is taking my niece away. No one's trying to do that, Officer Reynolds said calmly. We're simply verifying the report. Malcolm eased back slightly, but stayed visibly guarded. Mr. Vire, Carter continued, since we're already here, would you mind if we took a quick look inside the lighthouse? Malcolm's eyes narrowed. Why? Just to be thorough. For a moment, it looked like he might refuse, but then he sighed and pulled a keyring from his coat. Fine, but don't touch anything. It's dusty, and I only use it for storage. As he unlocked the metal door, Eli noticed a tremble in the man's hands. The door groaned open, revealing a dim, dust-coated space inside. Light filtered through grimy windows, casting a gloomy haze over the sparse furnishings. A spiral staircase led upward, and a closed wooden hatch hinted at a basement level. You're welcome to look around, Malcolm said curtly. Just don't go through my things. Tomas remained outside, saying the cramped interior made him uneasy. Inside, Eli moved cautiously with the officers. The air smelled like damp wood and mildew, but some surfaces had clearly been disturbed recently. He spotted footprints in the dust, small ones. What's down there? Carter asked, nodding toward the storm cellar door. Old gear, broken furniture, nothing of interest, Malcolm replied. Mind if we check it out? Malcolm's jaw tightened again, but he moved to unlock the hatch. If you insist. A single flickering bulb lit the steps as they descended. The cellar was cluttered. Boxes, tangled nets, fishing gear. Tarps covered large objects. It was tight, claustrophobic. But one detail stopped Eli cold. Malcolm positioned himself in front of a tall wooden cabinet. The move wasn't casual, it felt intentional. What's in there? Eli asked. Same as the rest, Malcolm said quickly. Family stuff, old photos, nothing important. Carter gave the room a once-over, but if he noticed anything suspicious, he didn't show it. I think that's all, Mr. Vire. Thank you for cooperating. Malcolm nodded sharply and moved toward the stairs. As he stepped away from the cabinet, something caught Eli's eye. Through a small crack in the broken door, something pale, fabric. He leaned slightly. It was a hat, light-colored, small, and heartbreakingly familiar. His eyes shifted. Near the wall, partway hidden under a tarp, 2 fishing rods, one full-sized, one smaller, a child's reel, bright-colored, identical to the one he gave Sophie. Malcolm's voice cut through the silence. Gentlemen, if you're finished, he said, voice now lower. But Eli didn't move. Something in this room wasn't right, and he was done backing down. Those rods, Eli said, his voice tight with emotion. They look exactly like the ones my wife and daughter used. Malcolm's jaw visibly clenched. They're mine, and they belong to my late daughter. May we take a closer look? Officer Carter asked calmly. I'd prefer if you didn't, Malcolm said firmly. Those are personal. I don't even let my niece handle them. That's why I keep them here, and not at home. Carter gave a respectful nod, backing off, but Eli couldn't let it go. And the hat in that cabinet, it looked exactly like Hannah's, he added quietly. A flicker, too fast to miss, crossed Malcolm's face. Fear? Annoyance? Without answering, he turned sharply and disappeared back down into the cellar. Moments later, he returned with the hat in hand, along with a worn fishing toolbox. "I found this hat washed up months ago," Malcolm said. "If it's your wife's, you can take it. I don't need it." Eli took it, hands trembling. There was no doubt it was Hannah's, pale, cream-colored, with her custom stitching on the side. He could barely breathe. "And the box?" Eli asked, eyeing the familiar tackle container. "It's mine," Malcolm said quickly. "That brand's been around for decades. My father gave it to me when I was a kid." His words came too fast. They finished searching the lighthouse, climbing the narrow spiral staircase to the lantern room, but there was nothing else. No trace of Sophie, no sign of life beyond Malcolm. As they stepped out into the bright coastal sunlight, Eli clutched the hat tightly, unsure what to feel: relief at finding something of Hannah's, or dread because it raised even more questions about the man who'd found it. Malcolm turned as he locked the lighthouse door behind them. "I assume we're done here?" "For now," Carter replied, his tone neutral. "Thank you for your cooperation." As the group prepared to leave, Carter asked, "Mr. Vire, we'll need a way to reach you. Do you have a current number?" "I don't use a phone anymore," Malcolm said curtly. "I value my privacy." "Then, an address?" Malcolm gestured toward the horizon. "I live on Wolf Island, northern shoreline. Just me and my niece. Occasionally, tourists come through. We help with directions, supplies." His tone was clipped, defensive. "I make trips between Wolf Island, Sealbone, and Greyhoor when needed. Otherwise, I keep to myself." "We may need to follow up," Officer Reynolds added. "Then come to the island," Malcolm said flatly. "But I'd appreciate it if I'm not bothered unless absolutely necessary." Without another word, Malcolm climbed into his boat and pulled away from the dock, but instead of turning toward Wolf Island, he headed in the direction of the mainland. Eli watched the boat disappear into the distance. Something didn't sit right. "That man's hiding something," he said softly. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Carter replied. "But, yes, his behavior was strange." They boarded the patrol boat, Tomas at the wheel, steering them back toward Greyhoor. As the lighthouse faded into the distance, Eli sat silently, Hannah's hat still in his grip. After several minutes, he spoke again. "Those fishing rods in the cellar, they weren't just similar, they were exact. Same brand, same color. Hannah's was a Mariner Pro X6 with the chrome reel. I bought it for her birthday 3 years ago. That model's not cheap and not common." Officer Reynolds jotted a note. "Could be coincidence, Mr. Wells. That brand is known around here. But the hat, that's different. That's real. That's hers." Eli shook his head. "He's not telling the whole truth. The way he blocked that cabinet, like he didn't want us near it, and how nervous he got when we mentioned the rods." "We get it," Carter said. "We'll dig deeper into his background once we're back. I promise." They docked at Greyhoor shortly after, the mood tense. Before leaving, the officers asked to take the hat as evidence. Eli hesitated. It was the first piece of Hannah he'd held in nearly a year, but he nodded and handed it over. Once the officers left for the station, Eli stood alone on the dock with Thomas. "I still don't trust that man," he said, gazing at the gray horizon. "What's your gut say?" Thomas hesitated. He gave me a bad feeling. "And the girl in his photo? She looked like the one I saw this morning." "But?" Eli asked. "She had short hair, in the photo and on the dock. Your daughter from the flyer. She wore braids." Eli's stomach dropped. Sophie never cut her hair. Hannah wouldn't have let her. "I'm sorry if I gave you false hope," Thomas said gently. "No, you didn't. You gave me something to hold on to, and you're still not convinced, are you?" "I'm not sure," Thomas admitted. "But I'll tell you what's strange. I've been making delivery runs to that research station for over 15 years. I know every face that lives on Wolf Island. I've never seen that man. Never seen a child either. and none of the researchers have ever mentioned a man and girl living there. Eli turned to him, eyes sharp. So he lied? Maybe, Tomas said. Or maybe he's hidden himself well. But I head back tomorrow morning. I can ask around, quietly, see what people say. Maybe someone knows who he really is. Eli nodded, the first glimmer of hope returning. I'd appreciate that, more than you know. Eli pulled out his phone, and he and Tomas exchanged contact details. I should get going, Tomas said, glancing at the time. My wife's probably wondering where I am, but I'll call you after my delivery run tomorrow, let you know if I learn anything. Thank you, Eli said, gripping his hand with quiet gratitude. You have no idea how much this means to me. Tomas gave him a firm shake. I just hope we find the truth, whatever it turns out to be. After Tomas left, Eli returned to his car. But instead of starting the engine, he just sat there, staring at the wheel, mind spinning. The visit to the lighthouse played back in fragments. The rods, the cabinet, Malcolm's evasive tone. None of it added up. If Hannah and Sophie had truly been lost to the storm, how had her favorite hat ended up in that cellar? And those fishing rods, he couldn't stop thinking about them. Finally, he started the car. But instead of heading home, his hands turned the wheel toward the waterfront. Greyhore's old tavern, the Silver Anchor, had been a fixture in the town for over a century. And if anyone might know more about Malcolm Vire, it would be the fishermen who gathered there. The place looked just as Eli remembered it. Faded wood walls, thick with the scent of salt, fish, and old varnish. Inside, a few older men nursed their drinks. These were the lifers, men who knew every boat, every name, every hidden inlet. Eli took a stool at the bar. "One beer, please," he said to Doug the bartender, a man whose hands had served more pints than most had seen storms. As Doug poured, Eli pulled out his phone and began searching. That fishing rod from the lighthouse, it was top shelf, part of a specialized line used by serious anglers, not something you'd just find in a storage room. When Doug brought the drink, Eli asked casually, "You ever hear of a man named Malcolm Vire?" Doug raised an eyebrow. "Vire? That's a name I haven't heard in a long time." He leaned on the counter, voice dropping a notch. "Odd guy. Keeps to himself. Why?" "I ran into him today, at the Wolf Rock Lighthouse." Doug gave a slow nod. "Yeah, that fits. Bought that place years back. I think he used to be some kind of engineer. Maybe retired early. Got money. Likes solitude." Then his tone shifted. "But there's been talk." "What kind of talk?" Eli asked, keeping his voice even. Doug glanced around the tavern. "Small town, you know how it is. People say he's off, spends weeks out there alone, doesn't mix with anyone. Someone mentioned he was building something out on Sealbone." Eli sat up. "Sealbone? But he told police he lives on Wolf Island." Doug frowned. "Wolf? Nah, that doesn't track. The marine station's out there. They'd know if someone was living nearby with a kid." Eli's pulse quickened. "Kid?" Doug shrugged. "That's what I heard. A niece or something. Look, I don't know details. He's always been private. What I know's just secondhand talk." Eli took a long sip of his beer. "Do you know if he keeps a boat in Greyhore?" "Last I heard," Doug said, thinking, "he had a boathouse tucked away off the inlet channels. Real hidden, back behind the reeds. Not easy to find." Eli finished his drink and dropped cash on the bar. "Thanks, Doug, really. Hope you find what you're after," Doug called as Eli stepped outside. Without hesitation, Eli dialed Tomas. It rang 4 times before he picked up. "Eli? Everything okay?" "I need your help again," Eli said, his voice low but urgent. "Can you meet me at the marina in 20 minutes? Tomas didn't even ask why at first. Then he added, "Yeah, I can do that." "What happened?" "I'll explain when you get here," Eli said. "It's about Malcolm Vire." He hung up and headed straight for the marina, For the first time in months, he felt like he was chasing something real, not just ghosts. When Thomas arrived, Eli wasted no time repeating what Doug had told him. "So, he doesn't even live on Wolf Island?" Thomas asked, frowning. Eli shook his head. "He lied. You've been delivering out there for years. You've never seen him, right?" "Not once," Thomas confirmed. "And if someone like him lived there with a child, I'd have heard." "I want to find his boathouse," Eli said. "Doug said it's hidden somewhere off the inlet. If he's been lying about where he lives, we need to know why." Thomas glanced toward the darkening harbor. "That area is like a maze. Some of those channels are barely wide enough to turn a boat around. What exactly are we looking for?" "I don't know," Eli admitted. "But if he's hiding something, we're going to find it." "That hat belonged to my wife," Eli said, his voice strained. "And I'm almost certain those fishing rods were Hannah's and Sophie's. I need to know what else he's hiding." "Shouldn't we tell the police?" Thomas asked. "And tell them what?" "That a bartender mentioned some rumors about where Malcolm might actually be living. That won't be enough for them to act. They'll want something solid. I just need to see the child. If she's really his niece, then—" Eli trailed off. The alternative was too painful to finish aloud. After a moment, Thomas nodded. "All right. My boat's better suited for shallow water anyway. We'll take mine." They boarded his small coastal vessel, reliable, quiet, made for navigating tight channels. As they pulled away from the marina, the late afternoon sun cast golden shadows across the surface of the water. The harbor buzzed with returning fishing boats, but the deeper they went, the quieter it became. Soon, they were alone. Thomas guided the boat into a narrow inlet. Tall reeds rose on either side, thick mangroves hugging the banks. Overhanging branches formed an arch in places, turning the water into a winding green tunnel. "Not many people come back here," Thomas said, his voice hushed. "Too shallow for most boats. Nothing back here but birds and swamp." "Perfect place to disappear," Eli muttered. They moved deeper into the channels, the noise of town now completely gone. Only the gentle thrum of the engine and the chirping of birds remained. "How far do these go?" Eli asked. "They wrap around the peninsula," Thomas said. "There's an old naval station on the far side, abandoned, off limits, mostly overgrown now." Then suddenly, Thomas eased the engine to a crawl. "Look there," he whispered, pointing. In a natural cove tucked behind a formation of rock and trees, something emerged from the reeds. A long, weathered boat sat moored to a crude dock. Its wooden frame was worn with age, and a makeshift cabin had been built on the deck. Perched atop the nearby rocks was a small shack, half hidden among twisted branches and undergrowth. "That's got to be it," Eli breathed. Thomas maneuvered the boat into a concealed position behind the vegetation. From here, they could watch without being seen. "What now?" Thomas asked. "We wait," Eli replied. It didn't take long. After about 15 minutes, movement. A figure stepped out from the shack, broad-shouldered, with stark white hair that caught the sun. "That's him," Eli whispered. "That's Malcolm." Thomas passed him a pair of binoculars. "Keep your eyes on him." Eli zoomed in. Malcolm descended the trail from the shack to the boathouse, entered it briefly, then climbed back up. But the next time he appeared, Eli's stomach dropped. Malcolm was carrying something. No, someone. A child, draped over his shoulder, small, blonde-haired, still. "Oh my God," Eli breathed. "He's carrying a girl." Thomas leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Is she moving?" I don't think so," Eli whispered. "She's limp. I can't tell if she's unconscious or worse." "Would someone drug their own niece?" Thomas muttered, visibly disturbed. They watched in silence as Malcolm disappeared into the boathouse with the child. Moments later, he emerged, alone, and climbed back to the shack. Eli didn't wait another second. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands and dialed. When the dispatcher picked up, Eli gave his name and explained what they were seeing. We're near the inlet channels, east of the harbor. Coordinates are approximate, but listen, Malcolm Vire may have taken a child, possibly my daughter. We need help, now. Stay on the line, Mr. Wells, the dispatcher instructed. Units are being dispatched to your location. Eli clutched the phone to his ear while continuing to watch through the binoculars. Malcolm appeared again. This time he was carrying a heavy sack, large and awkward, straining under the weight. As he made his way down the narrow trail, he slipped. The sack tumbled down the rocky slope and landed near the bottom. Eli quickly zoomed in. The opening had come loose, and from it something spilled out. A head, a woman's head, blonde hair, tangled and still. Eli's voice was barely more than a whisper, but it was steady. "There's a woman," he told the dispatcher. "Inside the sack. I can see her hair. I think she's dead." Eli couldn't bring himself to say the words. He just stared, breath shallow, as Malcolm retrieved the sack, slung it over his shoulder again, and carried it back into the boathouse. Then, like nothing had happened, he returned to the cabin. "How long until the police get here?" Tomas asked, voice tight with urgency. "They're on their way," Eli said, still holding the phone to his ear. "But I don't know how fast they can navigate these channels." A few minutes later, Malcolm emerged again, this time hauling 2 large cooler boxes, the kind used for transporting perishables. He loaded them onto the boat, moving quickly and deliberately. "He's preparing to leave," Eli told the dispatcher. "You need to hurry. He's about to disappear." "Units are inbound," the dispatcher assured him. "Do not approach. The suspect may be armed and dangerous." Eli relayed this to Thomas, who gave a grim nod. "We should reposition. Pull back just a bit. Still close enough to see, but out of sight if he starts moving." They began carefully edging the boat into thicker cover, but then it happened. A twig snapped under Thomas's boot, loud, too loud in the still air. Malcolm's head snapped toward the sound. Without hesitation, he reached into his coat and pulled a handgun. "He's armed," Eli whispered into the phone. "And I think he saw us." "Back away immediately," the dispatcher instructed. "Get to a safe location." Thomas steered them deeper under the overhanging brush, but it was clear they had been spotted. "I know you're there," Malcolm's voice echoed over the water, far too loud for comfort. "Show yourselves!" Eli and Tomas stayed completely still, barely breathing. A shot cracked through the air. It struck the water just a few yards from their boat. A warning. "Come out!" Malcolm shouted again. "Now!" "What do we do?" Thomas whispered. "Stay down," Eli said, his voice barely audible. "Help is coming." And then they heard it. The distant hum of engines, the whirring thump of helicopter blades. Malcolm turned, distracted by the rising noise. His face shifted from aggression to something more calculating. "Should we try to block the channel?" Tomas asked, motioning to the narrow exit that led back toward the harbor. "No," Eli said. Dispatcher said no engagement. But it didn't matter. Their decision was made for them. Multiple police boats appeared at the mouth of the channel, lights flashing. Overhead, a police helicopter dropped into position, its spotlight flooding the clearing in stark white light. "Malcolm Vire!" came a booming voice from one of the boats, amplified over a loudspeaker. "This is Coastal Police. Drop your weapon and surrender now." Malcolm stood frozen in the light, his gun still in hand. His face was twisted, not in fear, but fury. The helicopter hovered just overhead, the roar of the blades turning the air to static. "Drop the weapon," the voice repeated. "You are surrounded." Slowly, Malcolm obeyed. He lowered the gun, then let it fall to the dock with a heavy clatter. Raising his hands, he turned toward the officers, but his face showed no sign of surrender, just cold, bitter calculation. Eli watched as 2 boats closed in, Officers advanced with weapons drawn, surrounding Malcolm, disarming and handcuffing him with practiced precision. But even as he was restrained, Malcolm's eyes swept across the water, and somehow, even in the shadows, found Eli's. For a brief second, their eyes locked, and then Malcolm smiled. It wasn't remorse. It was hatred. He began to laugh, quietly at first, then louder, until the sound carried across the water, even through the beating blades of the chopper. It was a sound Eli would never forget. As one boat took Malcolm into custody, another glided toward Eli and Thomas's position. "Mr. Wells, Mr. Herrera," an officer called out. "You're safe now. You can come out." They guided Thomas's boat into the main channel, following the officers back toward the dock near Malcolm's boathouse. More patrol boats had arrived, along with emergency medical crews. Eli jumped to his feet the moment they tied off. "Is it her?" he asked, heart racing. "Is it Sophie?" "We're still assessing the scene," an officer said gently. "Please stay right here for now." Eli nodded, gripping the side of the boat to stay upright as the seconds crawled by. Then, a medic emerged from the boathouse. In his arms was a small figure, wrapped in an emergency blanket. Even from a distance, Eli could see the blonde hair. "Sophie!" he gasped, trying to leap forward, only to be gently restrained by an officer. "Sir, please, let the medics do their job." The girl was carried to a waiting medical boat, but before she was loaded, Eli saw her face, pale, unfocused, but unmistakably hers. "That's her," he choked. "That's my daughter. That's Sophie." Thomas stepped up beside him. "That's the girl I saw this morning. I'm sure of it now." An officer gave a short nod and spoke into his radio, confirming the identification. "We'll get you to the hospital shortly, Mr. Wells, but please, stay with us a little longer. We're still securing the area." Eli turned his head, just in time to see another grim procession forming. As officers carried a sealed body bag from the boathouse to a waiting vessel, Eli didn't need to ask. He already knew. "Hannah," he whispered, his voice cracking beneath the weight of the truth. For all the months of searching, for all the silence from the sea, some small, stubborn part of him had clung to the hope that she might still be out there. But now, that hope was gone. A nearby officer approached quietly. "Sir, we'll need a formal identification, but based on the description and context..." Eli nodded, numb. "I understand." The officer hesitated. "There's more, Mr. Wells. You should prepare yourself. What we found in the bag and in the boathouse, it's not just tragic, it's deeply disturbing." "My wife was..." Eli asked, barely able to speak the words. The officer gently unzipped the bag just enough for Eli to see, and in that instant, something inside him shattered. He had braced himself to find Hannah, but nothing could have prepared him for what Malcolm had done. Her body had been desecrated, altered in ways Eli couldn't process. It no longer looked like the woman he had loved. It barely looked human. Eli dropped to his knees, the breath stolen from his chest. Grief hit him like a physical force. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't look away. Tears streamed down his face, but beneath them was something sharper, an anger so fierce it shook his whole body. He had no words for the horror, only the scream building inside him, silent and suffocating. Before he could regain control, new movement caught his eye. Officers emerged from the boathouse, carrying the same cooler boxes Malcolm had loaded earlier. One look at the officers' faces told Eli, whatever was inside, it wasn't fishing gear. "What's in those?" Thomas asked beside him, his voice hushed and grim. The officer didn't sugarcoat it. "Evidence, highly disturbing evidence. That's all I can say right now." More investigators began filing out of the cabin above the rocks, each one holding evidence bags, personal items, small containers, what looked like a photo album, and the fishing toolbox Eli had seen at the lighthouse. His stomach turned. What could possibly be in that, he muttered. And yet, some part of him already knew. "We know this is overwhelming, sir," the officer said gently, "but we need to get you both back to the station. There's a boat waiting." "I can't," Eli said. "I have to see Sophie. She needs me." "She's already en route to Greyhoor Memorial," the officer assured him. "She's getting the best care available, and you'll see her soon. But right now, we need your statement while everything is still clear." Eli nodded slowly. It took every ounce of strength he had, but he agreed. As he and Thomas boarded the police boat, Eli looked back one last time at the makeshift compound, Malcolm's hidden world, the dock, the rotting boat, the cabin on the rocks. What had Hannah endured there? What had Sophie witnessed? The return to Greyhoor passed in silence. Though Sophie was alive, an impossible blessing, Hannah was gone, and the truth about what had happened was far darker than any nightmare Eli could have imagined. At the station, officers separated Eli and Thomas to take their statements. Eli took several minutes to steady his breathing before recounting every detail, from the moment Thomas spotted the girl at the lighthouse to the final confrontation. He described the fishing rods, the toolbox, the chilling moment Malcolm carried Sophie's limp body, and the sack. When he finished, he looked at the detective, Rivera, his voice barely above a whisper. Why would he do this? Why take them? Why keep Sophie alive? Detective Rivera closed her notebook, her expression heavy. "Mr. Wells, we've been reviewing what was recovered at the scene, and I want to prepare you. Some of this will be hard to hear." Eli braced himself. "Tell me everything," Rivera began. "The two coolers Malcolm was preparing to move, they contained human remains, preserved, cut and stored in labeled jars, like medical specimens, each marked with a name and date." Eli's breath caught. "The toolbox you saw? It held surgical tools, clean, precise, and based on what we found in the bag that contained your wife. It's clear he had begun a process." She didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. Eli felt the bile rising in his throat. "There were also smaller items," Rivera continued. "Clear resin blocks, almost like display pieces. Inside them, scraps of clothing, bits of fabric, hair." She paused. "One of those blocks contained what appears to be your daughter's braids." Eli's fists clenched, knuckles bone white. His entire body shook as he processed her words. "He kept them?" he whispered. "Not trophies exactly," Rivera said, carefully choosing her words. "More like relics, artifacts, a pattern we've seen before, though rarely with this level of organization." She looked directly at him. "Mr. Wells, this wasn't random. What Malcolm built out there, it was deliberate." Eli sat silently, eyes fixed on the table in front of him. Deliberate, and his family had been part of it. "Based on the journals we found," Rivera continued, her tone steady but somber, "Malcolm didn't see these acts as crimes. He viewed them as tributes, attempts to preserve something he believed the world was constantly destroying. He was obsessed with stopping time, with maintaining what he called perfect maternal bonds. Forever." "You found his journals?" Eli asked. "And a photo album," she confirmed. "They were hidden in his cabin. The album contained staged photographs, Malcolm posing with his victims. He dressed them, arranged them, made it look like family portraits. In his mind, they were his family." Eli struggled to understand. Why would anyone? He couldn't finish. "The nature of his crimes wasn't sexual," Rivera said gently, anticipating the unspoken fear. "His fixation was on preservation, on protecting mother-daughter pairs from what he described as time, decay, and emotional chaos. His journals are filled with these ideas, entire pages about saving families from disorder." "Who is this man?" Eli asked quietly. "We've been building a profile," Rivera said. "Malcolm Vire was once a respected maritime engineer. He specialized in designing storm-resistant offshore structures. but about 15 years ago, he lost his wife and daughter in a ferry accident, a ferry he helped design. Eli's stomach turned. The guilt consumed him, Rivera continued. He withdrew from public life and used a large settlement to buy the lighthouse. He didn't just want to replace what he lost. According to our forensic psychiatrist, he developed a belief that he could reconstruct it, rebuild a version of his family that would never leave, never die, and never age. Tomas had returned to the room by now. He sat quietly, listening. Rivera added, in his mind, he wasn't harming these women. He was preserving them, honoring them. He wrote again and again about how chaos destroys mothers, how time ruins children, how only he could save them from it all. Eli's voice was barely audible. And Hannah, Sophie? Rivera checked her notes, her expression darkening. 8 months ago, they were caught in a storm. According to Malcolm's journal, he saw their boat near the lighthouse, damaged, sinking. He helped them dock and offered shelter, promising to call for help once the storm passed. But he never did. Eli muttered, the scene playing out in his head. No. Hannah became suspicious when he failed to use the radio. When she confronted him, he reacted violently. He restrained them, kept them locked inside the lighthouse, while he completed construction on his new cabin and boathouse on Sealbone Island. He was preparing to move them, Eli said, putting the pieces together. Yes, Rivera confirmed. He believed the lighthouse had become too exposed, too many visitors, too many risks. So he began building a more hidden base, where he could continue undisturbed. But when Mr. Herrera spotted Sophie this morning, the plan unraveled. She was still drugged? Thomas asked. Lightly sedated, Rivera said, but conscious enough to escape the cabin while Malcolm was distracted. That moment, just that brief moment, is what saved her. If I had stopped, Tomas began, voice thick. You couldn't have known, Rivera told him gently. What matters is you reported what you saw, and that led us to her, and to Hannah. Eli swallowed hard. When did he couldn't say the rest. Rivera hesitated. The medical examiner believes she was killed today, within hours of our arrival. Malcolm likely realized he couldn't move her without drawing attention after Sophie was seen. Eli shut his eyes. Hannah had survived 8 months, only to be taken from him just as help was within reach. Were there others? He asked after a moment. We've already identified remains belonging to at least 3 other mother-daughter pairs, Rivera said. All disappeared over the last decade from coastal towns within a 100-mile radius. We're reaching out to those families now. They'll finally get answers, even if they're not the ones they prayed for. Eli's voice was cold now. What happens to him? He'll face multiple charges, kidnapping, murder, unlawful imprisonment, and more. Rivera said, his attorney may attempt an insanity defense, but considering the level of planning, the record-keeping, the methods, we don't believe it will hold. Whether he ends up in prison or a secure facility, he'll never walk free again. Eli nodded slowly. I need to see Sophie. Can someone take me to her now? Of course, Rivera said. An officer is waiting outside to drive you to the hospital. We'll need to speak again, but right now, your daughter comes first. As Eli stood, he turned to Tomas. Thank you. If you hadn't seen her, go, Thomas said simply. Be with your daughter. That's what matters now. The drive to Greyhoor Memorial began, but Eli hardly noticed the movement of the car. All he could think about was Sophie, alive, waiting, and everything they still had left to face, together. The drive to the hospital passed in a daze. When Eli arrived at Greyhoor Memorial, he was quickly led to a private consultation room where a doctor awaited him. Mr. Wells, said Dr. Patel, her voice calm but concerned. I've been overseeing your daughter's initial care. Eli's voice trembled. How is she? Physically, Dr. Patel began, she's stable. Remarkably so, given what she's been through. She was still under heavy sedation when she arrived, but it's wearing off. She's showing signs of malnutrition and a mild respiratory infection, likely from prolonged exposure to damp, poorly ventilated conditions. Will she recover? Eli asked, almost afraid to hope. With proper care, yes, Dr. Patel confirmed. We'll keep her for a few days to treat the infection and stabilize her nutrition. If there are no complications, she'll continue her recovery at home. Eli swallowed hard. And psychologically? Dr. Patel's tone softened. That will take longer. We've brought in Dr. Morgan, a pediatric psychologist. Children are resilient, but what Sophie experienced will require ongoing support, therapy, and patience. Eli nodded, but another weight pressed against his chest. My wife, Hannah. Dr. Patel lowered her gaze. The medical examiner is still completing the autopsy. It's part of the investigation, but I want you to know, her body is being treated with care and dignity. Once the process is complete, you'll be able to make arrangements. Eli's voice cracked. After everything she endured, I just want her to have peace. When you're ready, the doctor said gently, our chaplain or social worker can help with that. But right now, let's focus on Sophie. She'll be moved to a private room shortly. You can stay with her as long as you like. A nurse arrived and led Eli through the quiet halls. As they walked, she explained that Sophie was still drifting in and out, but her vitals were strong. Outside the room, Eli paused, trying to brace himself for what he might see. He opened the door. Sophie lay in a hospital bed, dwarfed by its size. IV lines trailed from her arm. Monitors beeped softly. Her hair had been cut short, and her face looked thinner, almost unfamiliar, but she was breathing. She was alive. Eli stepped forward and gently took her hand. Her fingers were cool, but they curled around his, just slightly. Sophie, he whispered, tears rising. Daddy's here. You're safe now. Her eyelids flickered, then stilled. Eli pulled a chair close and sat beside her, his hand wrapped around hers, refusing to let go. Minutes passed, then hours. Nurses came and went. Eli stayed, speaking softly, telling her she was loved, that she was safe now, that he'd never leave her again. As twilight dimmed the sky outside, Sophie stirred. This time, her eyes opened. She blinked slowly, confused. Then she turned and saw him. Daddy? She whispered. Her voice was barely there, fragile and full of disbelief. Yes, sweetheart, Eli said, tears falling freely. It's me. I'm here. Her expression shifted, and pain filled her gaze. Mommy, she whimpered. The bad man. He took Mommy away. Eli leaned forward, holding her gently. I know, baby. I know. She told me to be brave, Sophie whispered through her tears. She said you'd find us. And you did. I never stopped looking, Eli promised. Not for one single day. Sophie wrapped her arms around him, her small body trembling with grief. I want Mommy to come back. Eli held her close, barely able to breathe through the pain. I want that too. But Mommy, she can't come back, sweetheart. But she loved you so much. She was so brave. And she kept you safe until I could get to you. Sophie nodded, her tears falling silently. She sang to me every night. That sounds just like her, Eli whispered. He gathered Sophie into his arms as she sobbed, rocking her gently. The weight of the loss was unbearable, but they carried it together. I miss her so much, Sophie cried. I miss her too, Eli said. And it's okay to be sad. We're going to be sad for a long time, but we have each other now, and we're going to take care of each other, just like Mommy would have wanted. Slowly, Sophie's sobs quieted. The road ahead would be long. There would be nightmares, therapy, court hearings, and questions that might never be answered. But Sophie had survived, and that, just one day earlier, had felt impossible. Through the hospital window, sunlight stretched across the sea. The same sea that had taken Hannah away had also, through chance, courage, and the watchful eye of one fisherman, brought Sophie home. Father and daughter remained together in that room, bound by grief, but also by love. And in that moment, amid sorrow, a fragile new hope began to grow, not for what was lost, but for what they would build next, together.